Welcome back, students, to the next session of A Horse and Two Goats. Now, while we were doing the chapter, we know that the last paragraph where he spoke about that when the thief was caught, he showed with action that he would be minced, that is, he gestured as if he would be hit and minced like the shreds of meat. The American watched his hands intently and said, "I know what you mean. Chop something? Maybe I'm holding you up and you want to chop wood. Where is your axe? Hand it to me and show me what to chop. I do enjoy it. You know, just a hobby. We get a lot of driftwood along the backwater near my house, and on Sundays I do nothing but chop wood for fireplace. Although it may take all the sections of the Sunday New York Times to get a fire started," and he smiled at his reference. Now the American was not able to understand his gesture, and he says, "Oh, probably I'm stopping you from doing your work." And he had seen most of the Indians chop wood, so he guessed that he is stopping him from chopping something. And then he says, "Oh, maybe I'm holding you back from the chopping of wood. Where is your axe? Just show it. Even I would like to try my hand on it. It's just a kind of hobby which I enjoy doing it." And then he spoke about his lifestyle in America. He said there are a lot of pieces of wood floating in the water along the bank, which is behind his house. And on Sundays, he would do nothing but chop wood for the fireplace, and at times it would take whole of the Sunday New York Times to get the fire lit, and then he smiled at the reference of it. Munni felt totally confused, but decided the best thing would be to make an attempt to get away from this place. He tried to edge out saying, "Must go home," and turned to go. So Munni tried his level best to avoid the confusion which was taking place because of the difference of language which he was not able to understand, and similarly the American, who was not acquainted with Hindi or Tamil, he was not able to converse, and both of them were talking on some other topic. And to avoid that confusion, that bafflement, he just tried to edge out from there, and he spoke to himself that "must go home," that is, I need to go back. The other seized his shoulder and said desperately, "Is there no one, absolutely no one here to translate for me?" So he says, "Is there nobody to just help me around and translate for me what I'm trying to say?" He looked up and down the road, which was deserted in this hot afternoon. Now he looked up and down to check if there could be anybody passerby who could help him to explain what he wanted to know. But there was nobody in that hot afternoon. India being a tropical climate, in the afternoon, especially in south, the temperature becomes very high, and so people are mostly indoors. The stranger almost beyond Munni's back to the statue and asked, "Isn't this statue yours? Why don't you sell it to me?" Now he kind of restrained him from moving, and he looked at Munni's back towards the statue, and he said, "Isn't this statue which belongs to you? And why don't you sell this to me?" The old man now understood the reference to the horse, thought for a second, and said in his own language, "I was an urchin this high when I heard my grandfather explain this horse and warrior, and my grandfather himself was this high when he heard his grandfather, whose grandfather." Now the old man, that is Munni, is being referred here. He understood the reference to what the American was trying to say. But again, due to the lack of each other's language, he tried to explain in his own mother tongue what he knew about the statue and the warrior. So he says, I was an urchin, that is, I was a young boy with the poor ragged clothes when I heard my grandfather explain this horse and warrior. And similarly, my grandfather heard from his grandfather, whose grandfather, the other man interrupted him. I don't want to seem to have stopped here for nothing. I will offer you a good price for this, he said, indicating the horse. He had concluded without the least doubt that Muni owned this mud horse. Perhaps he guessed by the way he sat on its pedestal, like other souvenir sellers in this country, presiding over their wares. Now, the American stopped him because he couldn't understand what he was trying to say. But then he said, I don't want to seem to have stopped here for nothing. That is, I didn't want to stop at this place for anything. But I would like to offer you a good price for this horse, indicating it towards it. He then concluded without the least doubt that Muni probably owned that horse because the way he was sitting on its pedestal, like the other souvenir sellers in the country who take a possession of their own things while they are selling it on the roads. Muni followed the man's eyes and pointing fingers and dimly understood the subject matter, and feeling relieved that the theme of the mutilated body had been abandoned, at least for the time being, said again enthusiastically, I was this high when my grandfather told me about this horse and the warrior, and my grandfather was this high when he himself. Now Muni looked and saw, followed the man's eyes and pointing fingers, and he could dimly understand what he was trying to say. And somewhere he could understand the real enthusiasm, what he wanted to know. So he was about to start with his story again, and at that time again he was stopped. The Tamil that Muni spoke was stimulating even as pure sound, and the foreigner listened with fascination. I wish I had my tape recorder here, he said, assuming the pleasantest expression. Your language sounds wonderful. I get a kick out of every word you utter here. He indicated his ears, but you don't have to waste your breath in sales talk. I appreciate the article. You don't have to explain its points. So he again stopped Muni from speaking, and he could see that Muni was getting aggravated. He was anxious while he was explaining, but the foreigner was more interested, and he became curious in the way Muni was explaining in his own language. And he felt that he, in case if he would have got a tape recorder, he would have recorded his voice, because that was one of the pleasantest voice what he heard with the expressions. And then he even tried telling him, I already liked your article which is on sale. You don't have to explain me the intricate details of this. You can avoid the explanation of it. I never went to a school in those days. Only Brahman went to school, but we had to go out and work in fields, morning till night, from sowing to harvest time, and when Pongal came, we had to cut the harvest. My father allowed me to go out and play with others at the tank, so I don't know the Firangi language you speak. Even little fellows in your country probably speak the Firangi language, but here only learned men and officers know it. Now he adds on, Muni speaks again in his own language, that I never went to school, only Brahmins went to school, for he had to go out and work in fields from morning till night, sowing at the harvest time. And when Pongal came, he was supposed to help his father to go and cut the harvest, and they were just allowed to go and play out with others at the tank. So that is the reason why he doesn't know this Firangi language, that is the foreign language. He said that in your country all people know this language, but here only learned men and officers know it. The foreigner laughed heartily, took out another cigarette, and offered it to Munni, who now smoked with ease, deciding to stay on if the fellow was going to be so good as to keep up his cigarette supply. So the foreigner laughed heartily at what Munni said, and this made him ease a little and be comfortable. Then he thought about, if this foreigner is not harming me in any way and he's supplying me with a cigarette, he doesn't mind standing there with him. The American now stood up on the pedestal in the attitude of a demonstrative lecturer and said, running his finger along some of the carved decorations around the horse's neck, speaking slowly and uttering his words syllable by syllable. I could give a sales talk for this better than anyone else. This is marvelous combination of yellow and indigo, though faded now. How do you people of this country achieve these flaming colors? Now while he is still conversing with Munni, he went around, stood up next to the pedestal, and he ran his finger across the carved decoration which was there on the horse. And he said, I could be a better salesman, for I will be able to explain the beauty of this, the marvelous combination of yellow and indigo. Though with time it has faded, but he admires the color, the flaming color which is there on the statue. Munni, now assured that subject was still the horse and not the dead body, said, this is a guardian. It means death to our adversaries. At the end of Kali Yuga, this world and all other worlds will be destroyed, and the Redeemer will come in shape of a horse called Kalki. This horse will come to life and gallop and trample down all bad men. Now he says, and he's assured that the foreigner wanted to know about the horse. So he gives it in full detail, and he tries to explain that this horse, this warrior, is going to be our guardian. It means death to the adversaries, that is to the negatives and the evil. And then he says that the end of the Kali Yuga, when the world will come to an end, there will be a redeemer, that is a hope, a person who will come back with a new life, and in shape of a horse called Kalki, and will come up in life and gallop and trample down all the bad and evil men. While he was brooding on this pleasant vision, the foreigner utilized the pause to say, I assure you that this will have the best home in USA. I'll push away the bookcase. You know I love books, and I'm a member of 5 book clubs, and the choice and the bonus volumes mount up to a pile really in our living room as high as this horse itself. But they'll have to go. Ruth may disapprove, but I will convince. Munni continued his description. At the end of the world, our Pandit discoursed at the temple once how the oceans are going to close over the earth in huge waves and swallow us. This horse will grow bigger than the biggest wave and carry on its back only the good people and kick into the flood the evil ones. Plenty of them about, he said reflectively. Do you know when it is going to happen? He asked. So while he is brooding on the pleasant vision, the foreigner, he utilizes the pause to say that he'll take this piece to USA and he'll keep it with all care, and he'll take care of it. He spoke about that though he loves books, but he will push his bookcase on one side to ensure that this particular piece gets a good place. And he says, though he knows that Ruth may disapprove about this, but he will convince. While he's talking on about his new acquiring new souvenir which he is about to buy, Munni is still on with his own world, and he says that a Pandit discoursed, that is, he gave a lecture that the oceans is going to swallow up, will rise in a huge wave and swallow all the bad people and just carry the good people at the back of this horse. And when he's talking, he is absolutely full of expressions. In detail, he explains it. And then, do you know when it is going to happen? He questions this. With this, we come into this session. We'll continue the next part of the chapter in the next session. Take care. Thank you.